Welcome to New Mommy at 40, a honest, informative, and non-judgmental podcast for those navigating to and through parenthood in their 40s. Today's a very special episode because it's told from the perspective of a child of an older mom and how she's at the same age now that her mother had her. And I thought it would be really great to hear what her childhood was like, the impact of having an older mom on her own motherhood journey, which she'll share. And her name is Victoria Lartey-Williams, and she's the owner of Victorious Events. I can't wait to welcome her. But before we do, welcome back to all our friends who've been listening. And if you're new, hit the follow, subscribe button now so you don't miss an episode. All right, here we go. It didn't happen in my 20s. Who cares? Now I've got all this fancy wisdom to share. Hey, I've got this baby, you're getting the best of me, 'cause I'm a new mommy at 40. I'm very excited to have this guest today. As an older mom, it's refreshing to hear the perspective of someone who is now grown, successful, and is a child of an older mom. Her name is Victoria Lartey-Williams, and she's a very successful full-service planning event owner, creator of her own company called Victorious Events NYC. And she's with us today to offer the perspective of a woman now who's had an older mom, what their relationship is like now, what it was like growing up. For all of those of us who are wondering, what's our relationship going to be like? We'll have a glimpse of this with our conversation with Victoria today. So it's my pleasure to welcome her onto the show. Hi, Victoria.
Hi, Victoria.
I think your name is beautiful, by the way.
Thank you. Same here. I think you have the most beautiful name ever.
Well, I want to say, though we're going to be speaking about your mom a lot right now, I just want to personally thank her for choosing such a great name. Obviously, she's got great taste. So
absolutely. It's actually her middle name. So
yeah. There you go. And I think it's very fitting that your company would be called Victorious Events, which is fantastic. So I think you've definitely lived up to your name and then some. So on behalf of all of us, snaps.
Thank you so much.
As I was saying in the intro, the perspective that chatting with you offers today is not only for those of us who are older moms, new older moms, but also for those who may question the choices that we make in starting our families at this stage. So I wanted to find out more about your beautiful mother. So how old was she when she gave birth to you?
She was exactly 40 years old.
Ah. And did she have other children prior to you? What number do you fall in? I believe you do have siblings.
Yes. So I am one of three. Okay. I have two sisters. However, they are older than me. So my oldest sister, Nicole, she was 18 when I was born. And my middle sister, Nora, she was 14 when I was born. And so I always kind of say that I was the pleasant surprise in the family.
Does she say that? Does she acknowledge that she wasn't expecting you?
I'm sorry. Could you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Yeah. Was she not expecting you?
No, I was definitely a surprise. That I feel like their family was pretty much set. My mom and my dad and two girls, 4 years apart, and along came me.
Wow. So, all right. So it was a surprise for everyone. What a victorious surprise. Mm-hmm. And did she say at all to you what the reaction was from family members or friends of being pregnant again at that age?
Yes, she did. So I think my oldest sister was kind of like a little grossed out.
My parents have
what
sex?
Are you guys doing? Right?
Still?
And my father, he's just a couple years older than my mom, so that he was also in his 40s. But my middle sister, I think her perspective being 14, I think she was just excited to have a baby sister, and she always referred to me as her baby sister, even as I became an adult. So those were those perspectives. Although my oldest sister, she adores me, but I think it was just like that initial shock of like your parents like telling you that, and you're an adult, you're approaching adulthood, and you're starting your life, and then it's like, oh, I'm going to have a little sister, like a real little sister.
Yeah.
So, so that was just an interesting perspective there. Um, I think my grandmother, my mother's mother, was kind of like, "Are you sure you want to do this?" Because it just seemed so out of left field. But of course, I'm glad that she decided to move forward. Yeah.
Yeah, we're all glad. So, I can speak, from personal experience. My husband was 41 as well when our child was born, but he has two older children as well. And it is a weird kind of, relationship with that big of a gap. When did it catch up? When did you and your siblings finally get a chance to kind of be on the same page to hang and have your own relationship, you think?
I would say, I'm assuming probably as I got into my 20s, but we've always been very close. I adore my sisters. They were almost like having like two additional mothers because of that age gap, but like cool moms, that I could confide in and hang out with. And, a lot of times we would be out and people would assume that I was their daughter.
Right.
Like, no, this is my little sister. But I would say probably as I got into my 20s, that's where maybe that shift began, where, I was becoming my own person. And so, we'd hang out, we'd go places together, and it wasn't, the concept of like, oh, I'm babysitting my sister. It's like, oh, I can actually hang out with her. We can go out for drinks. We can go out to dinner. We can just talk and confide in each other. And they would, share things with me as well. So, yeah, I'd say around that time frame is when things kind of shifted. Yeah.
No, that's good. That gives me hope. And I think that they will also have a good rapport later, because now my bonus daughter, that's what I call her, she's always like, oh, my baby doll, my baby. It's like I gave her a doll, a living doll to play with. And I'm like, you can talk to her. You can actually read stuff to her. She can actually like have a conversation with you now. But she just like gawks at her. And I was wondering the other day, the reason I asked you, like, at what point does it get to like, oh yeah, let's hang and like we can actually converse? So I'm glad that you answered that. Gives me hope. Your mother now, looking back, was there a big difference between the pregnancies that she had when she was younger and the pregnancy with you? Did she mention any complications or concerns?
She has not mentioned much of a difference. I think that her birthing experience was very different. Most notably, that she does not have any memories of birthing either of my sisters. I think at that time, I'm not sure what type of concoction they gave mothers back then, but
it's a good word.
Yeah.
It's a good word.
She has no recollection of the birth, but she does remember mine, because whatever that was, they no longer had that in the early 80s. So that was very different for her. But otherwise, I think, she had a pretty uneventful pregnancy all three times. She never mentioned any complications, except for the fact that she did say, so I'm a Virgo, born in September 3rd. And I believe she went into early labor in June, and they gave her some type of medication to stop that from happening so that I would be full term. But other than that, I don't believe there were any other complications.
Okay. Yeah, I can imagine just the advancements in the medical field when it comes to pregnancy, more controversy when you're dealing with women of color and birth now. I'm sure it was very different. And how old are you now?
I am 41.
Oh, so you're the age of when she...
Yeah, pretty much.
Wow, that's a really interesting perspective. We'll definitely talk on that a little bit later. And some of the questions you and I were talking about that we wanted to kind of answer here for our friends listening. I wanted to ask, it a lot in your childhood, did you feel at what point did you realize your mom was older than probably the moms of your friends?
So I believe I was always aware of her age just based on the fact that my sisters were so much older. Uh, However, I guess call it good genes, but my mom always looked young. So it wasn't necessarily apparent that she was older than maybe some of the other mothers. And she looked younger than some of the younger ones, you know? Um,
Shout out to
so,
mom. Shout out to
right.
mom.
So it was never, I never felt like anyone was like looking at her or my dad and thinking like, oh, they're, how old are they? Like, how are they her parents? Like that never crossed my mind. But I think it was mainly because of the realization that obviously they had to be older if my sisters are the ages that they are.
Right.
But it never came up in school. I never felt a sense of shame or embarrassment or like weird about it. It just it just was what it was. And I don't know if it's the school I went to, you know, I don't recall like ever being teased or anything like that. I actually remember there was a young girl in one of my classes when I was maybe in kindergarten or first grade, and she had an older mother.
Hmm.
But it was very apparent that she was older. She looked much older. And I never really even put my mom in that same category because they might have been the same age. Well, actually, no, I think her mother was probably older than my mom, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I think visibly being older might make a difference in how, you know, someone kind of processes that as they're growing up. But my mom always looked youthful, and she still does. So.
And how old is your mom now? So she's in her
She's 82 years young,
82.
so I'm exactly half her age.
Wow. And what's your relationship with her like now?
Oh, it's great. She is so bubbly and fun, and we act silly together. We're always joking around, and we just love to be around each other. You know, she's like my best friend, and
Oh.
I I know that I'm very very fortunate to still have her. You know,
Yes.
she's in great health, great physical health. Like I'll put on some of these songs that are out on the radio now, or you know, these TikTok songs, and she'll get up and she'll start dancing. So physically, like she's strong. Um, However, she is suffering a little bit from dementia, so she does have a bit of memory loss. But if that's the worst of it right now, I feel very very fortunate because you know a lot of people who are in their 80s, they can't even walk. You know, they can't
Mm-hmm.
even do certain things. They're taking a whole bunch of different medications, and they're always going to the doctor and things like that. And every time we take her, me and my sister take her to the doctor, they're like, you know, your mom's in great health. Like she's doing really well. And if you look at her, you know, I'll share some photos of her with you, but
Mm-hmm.
she looks like she's in her late 60s, early 70s, maybe. You know, she
Wow.
looks really good. So, yeah. But we have a really loving, fun relationship. I will be honest, when the dementia started, uh, that was a bit of a transition that had its, you know, ups and downs, but I think that's the case with any type of transition.
Mm-hmm.
You know, us kind of getting used to the new normals as well as her also, but we've passed that.
Yeah.
And I think we're in a much better place now where we're just able to enjoy each other's company. And, you know, she might ask me the same question a couple of times.
Honey,
But
I
that's
do that
okay.
now.
You know, being patient, you know, remembering that it's just very interesting how the cycle of life goes and
Mm-hmm.
how, you know, you start as a child and you become an adult and you kind of become a little bit childlike, you know, as you
Mm-hmm.
get older. And me and how our roles have kind of switched from, you know, her mothering me to me taking care of her to a certain extent and
Mm-hmm.
making sure she, you know, she has her medication and making sure that, you know, I'm cooking her dinner and making sure, you know, her laundry's done and things like that. But I don't mind, you know, she was such a wonderful mother to me. So there's literally nothing that I wouldn't want to do for her to make her life as wonderful as possible.
Hmm. Well, I'm sorry that you're having to deal with that aspect of her aging, but I'm very thankful, like you said, and grateful that you still have a really good relationship and that she's still able to be mostly cognitive with you, which is fantastic. Was there a time um, recently, or I would say, probably in your 20s or 30s, did you feel at any time worried that she may not be with you?
You know what? I have never felt that about my mom, and that's so crazy. I felt like that more so with my dad because he had like health issues, but my
Mhm.
mom, she's always been healthy. She's never had any health issues. So I never really thought about that. But I think maybe in these later years, so again, full disclosure, my mother's parents, they both lived to be in their 80s. So she's in that
Mhm.
range, but they had health issues. So because she doesn't have any really, um, I can't really see it. I mean, I know that it has to happen because, that's the cycle of life,
Right.
but I didn't go through my life, with this impending doom kind of sitting on me because my grandparents lived, to be, much older. And if they didn't have those particular health issues, um, they probably would have lived, I don't know, into their 90s, maybe to be 100, I don't know. Um, but she's in a much better health than they were. So I kind of feel like, I mean, obviously there's always an end, but I don't feel it. It's not very apparent, in our day to day. So she's gets up every day and she's just so full of life and happiness. And honestly, if you were to speak to her, you probably wouldn't know that she has dementia. Again, except for maybe repeating the same question.
Well, I think
But
that, this is typical of that age, which is
right.
why the blessing is that you've had all this time with her.
Hmm.
And when these things are starting to happen is pretty much when you would expect
Right.
something to happen, but you don't want that to happen, but it's not too off base with the age. But the reason why I asked that question is that there are some of us who maybe not even us, some of the naysayers about having children in at this stage always, bring up, well, what are you going to do when, when you're gone? Like who's going to be with her? Or who's going to be with that child? Or um that's so selfish of you to have, this child right now when you may not be here. And I think it serves as just a I guess it just serves as a perspective or hope when you hear from your perspective that impending doom was not on your mind. You just enjoyed your mom. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like,
Absolutely. And I think that when people say that, could the same be said about anyone who decides to embark on parenthood? Because we're not promised tomorrow at
mhm.
any age. Sickness, accidents, anything can happen. Is it selfish to decide to start a family knowing that you may not be here tomorrow? I don't believe so. So when I hear people say things like that, I feel like it comes from a place of ignorance and not really looking at the full scope of what parenthood is. And I think at no matter what age you are, you have decided to bring a life into this world, and that in itself is a blessing. And I don't think that that's selfish. I think that it's very selfless, if anything, because of the care that you have to give to this child and help to raise them to be, the best that they can be. And knowing that, anything can happen at any time, but not dwelling on that because that's, first of all, it's very morbid. And, who wants to live life like that? And, that just wasn't my experience. With my father, however, I know this is about mothers, but, I'll
That's
bring my
okay.
dad into it.
Yeah.
Um, because he did have some illness when I was growing up. He had a stroke when I was, how old was I? I think I was 14, or in that age range. So it was odd. Like once that happened, I kind of worried that he may not be here to walk me down the aisle. So that was kind of like a sad thought. But I got married in 2016, and there he was,
Hmm.
walking me down, smiling. I have like such a beautiful photo of the both of us together during that moment. So the people that I thought would be there, like I even had like a backup in my mind, like, if something happened to my dad and he wasn't able to walk me down the aisle, it would be my grandfather or someone else, or like my brother-in-law. But neither one of those people are here now. But my dad was. So you just never know what
Yeah.
to expect in life. You just have to go with it and think positively. Like I don't understand these people who talk so negatively. It's like, what do you gain from that?
I know. I
Yeah.
know. And, I've never had a family member really say that to me. I think there've been a few who wonder why I was pursuing even trying to have another one. And then,
Mm.
but most have been completely supportive, like still to this day. Did you take your prenatal today? Because God's not done with you yet. And, but on social media, I did receive that comment off of, a video that I made about the top 5 things that I'm appreciating
Mhm.
um, as an older mom. And he went on forever about how selfish it was of me. The village took care of him. I didn't have
Oh,
to.
great. I was going to
Yeah.
say, let me know what post that is so I can chime in. But, I think a lot of times that's projection of their own fears
Yeah.
regarding that, or I don't know. It could be a million different things,
Things.
right?
Yeah.
But
I mean, he was in his 20s, I think, male. And the village went in and gave all these scenarios, just went in too much because I just kind of went past the comment. I couldn't care
right.
but less. But what it did show me is, well, it was my first time receiving that type of a
Mm.
comment, so I said, oh, there it is, and there it is. um but I think what you said about tomorrow isn't promised is so key, because even in my life, my grandmother lived to be 96, about, yeah, almost 97. And I just thought my mom was going to be with me forever. She had me when she was 23. My dad was 27. My dad is still with us at 72. And my mom passed away at 67.
Mm.
2 years ago. No clue. I thought I had all the time in the world, based on her health and my grandmother living to be so old. So, like you said, it really, you can't plan for it. Life isn't, it's not a guarantee that we will be here tomorrow. So, to that point, if you have it in your heart to have a child, you're right. It's the most selfless thing, especially if you're doing it out of love and you want to nurture and love someone and pour into to another human being. I think that's a very selfless act. But I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I think it's really important for your perspective of just going through life as the daughter of this amazing woman and male man, and you have and just living a beautiful life together. And you're right, it's definitely a blessing to have her with you. And I know you have many more memories to build together.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And I think it's also interesting that my mother experienced, or I should say my parents, but specifically my mother experienced parenthood in these two different phases of their lives, being very young, early 20s, meeting each other, um, having two little girls. The experience of my sisters, like I kind of feel like they had different parents than I had, because by
Mm,
the time they had me, they had mellowed out a bit. They had the wisdom. They had figured things out. Um, you know, so I think that there's a benefit there, to be honest,
hmm
being able to be more settled and more financially stable. And, I was born into an actual house. My parents had bought a house by the time I came along. Years before, when they had my oldest sister, they were staying with my mother's parents, and they had an apartment and things like that. So there are definitely benefits too. There are so many benefits
What do you think
to having a
has been the
family
biggest
later.
benefit you think in your relationship with your mother from her age, from her wisdom?
Biggest benefit, honestly, everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that that sounds like so broad, but I have had I've been very blessed. I've had a very, very good life, and I don't take any of it for granted. And I know that that is directly correlates. I don't want to necessarily say to her age, but just the person that she is and that she has become as she's gotten older. Um, and she was just such. She is,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm just speaking at the time of what I'm getting ready to mention.
Yeah.
So inspiring to me. Like my mom, when I was a kid, she went back to school, went back to college. So I remember seeing her, studying and, getting stressed out, having to like study for these exams, her finals, and, going to class with her sometimes. And I would sit in the back of the class, while she's, listening to a lecture, and seeing her go through that. And I was just so proud of her, when she graduated, and the whole family was there to see her graduate. She graduated from Medgar Evers College, here in Brooklyn,
Yeah.
and then she went on to get her master's in school psychology. So I just I always feel like her example was just something that I wanted to live up to, but in a really good way. It's never too late, no matter what it is, whether it's having a family, whether it's getting your degree, whether it's buying a home or starting a business, whatever it is that you want to do, don't let time dictate whether or not you can. I I think that's probably like one of the biggest takeaways that I can say that I've received from, having her as my mother.
Hmm. Has her, I guess, in her having you at 40, do you think that's impacted your idea of what motherhood can look like for you? Because I know and just before anyone attacks me, I already spoke to her about family planning. So I do know that she wants to have children. So, with that being said, does that impact your family planning?
So yeah, to be honest, so similar to you, my husband, he has two children from a previous marriage, and I knew that I wanted to have my own family, have my own child, but I never really thought of, this ticking clock necessarily because, well, I was like, well, my mom had me when she was 40.
Mm-hmm.
My sister had my nephew, I think, when she was 36 or 37. So this is all very normal in my family. And it's very, I also bring up like it's very interesting because my husband had a completely different perspective in his family. His parents had him when they were in their 20s. He had his children when he was in his 20s. So it's kind of unusual to him. But for me, it's like, is there another way? I mean, obviously there is. I'm being silly. It's like this is just normal. This is what we do here. So I would say those two examples, specifically my sister and my mom. Um, I felt that it was most important for me to have that stability before bringing a child into this world. And my husband and I feel like we're there. So, hopefully in the near future, we'll be blessed with one, but it would be a one and done situation.
I hear you. I hear you. I just did an episode about that. So, and I think it's becoming more of it's a new normal. The
Mm-hmm.
one and done parenthood is rising because there are more of us who are choosing to have children later.
Mm-hmm.
And one seems to be all they need because, for most because they're like, I did this on purpose. I wanted to be more stable. With that, I understand that that might be more financially sound to do one and just pour into every experience that I can and enjoy with that one. I'm good. So it is on the rise. So you're on trend, Victoria.
I'm on trend in that way. I'm on a trend with weddings. Absolutely.
I mean, you were born for this. Your name is perfect, and your mom, I think, and your dad did this on purpose with this name. Even though you were surprised, I really think that they gave you that name because it was a victorious event, and here you are. So now that you have, you're looking back on all that was poured into you, what is it that you think you want to impart on your child one day?
That's a very good question. I think that kind of, what I touched on before, the fact that there isn't anything that you can't do, and to not let life or any person or troll on the internet or, whatever is to be in the future, don't let anything tell you that you can't. If you want it and you're willing to work hard enough at it and really have that passion and dedication for it, go for it. And, to also realize that, not everything, nothing's perfect. You're going to hit some bumps. You might not be successful, right? It doesn't mean just because you put all this effort into something that it's going to happen. That's just the way that life is. But I think the most important thing for me, and this is just something that I live by, is that I don't want to live with regrets. And I think that it's really important to do everything you can. And if it's for you, it's for you. And if it's not, well, at least you know that you did your best, that you tried. And you'll be able to sleep at night knowing that. I also want to instill the concept of legacy. I think that that's so important. And I don't think that we should allow an age to determine whether or not we continue a legacy for our family. My husband and I, in addition to working in the wedding and events industry, we have taken on some real estate. And part of that goes back to my grandparents. They purchased a home in Fort Greene, Brooklyn, when my mother was a teenager, and my mother inherited that. And, we've renovated it, and, that house has to stay in our family. It's not going anywhere. But we want to make sure, it's passed on. It's not something that, gets sold, or becomes something that, my grandparents put so much into it. My mother put so much into it. We're putting so much into it. So sorry, kid, you're going to have to do the same. No,
guess what, kid? You're living in Fort Greene, Brooklyn.
It comes with the territory. But, I think that also because my husband and I are entrepreneurs, we definitely have a perspective of, go for your dreams, give it a shot. So I think that that's something that I definitely want to instill in my child. And just live life and be happy. I think that it's really, really important to seek joy in life. And I think now more than ever, my mother is an example of that. And the joy that she has every day, I hope my mother is around, for many more years to come. And if I am blessed to have a child, that child will be able to be, my mother will be able to be a part of my child's life as well. But either way, we'll have lots of memories, to share, with them, of the absolutely phenomenal woman that she is.
Yeah. And she raised a really amazing daughter.
Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you so much.
She really did. I mean, no, this is a dream for any any mother listening to this, any parent that's listening to this, you've got to have this feeling of just pride in just listening to you. We're not your moms, just in as just listening to a child describe their relationship with their mother in this way. It just couldn't be any more beautiful. So I know that you're going to be an amazing mother one day. I can't wait to know when that happens, because then we can have you on again, because I want to talk all about baby and how and all the details. But I know this baby's coming in style, because check out her website, people, because the events that she throws are just gorgeous. Please tell them how to find you.
So on all social media networks, my handle is Vic Events NYC. That's VICEVENTS NYC. That's Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, everything. Snapchat.
Snap. Oh, you're on the Snap? She's on the Snap, guys. You can find her anywhere. Listen, and she has been featured in InStyle, Essence, Madame Noir, just to name a few. I mean, just beautiful, beautiful work. And I know your mom is extremely proud of her beautiful surprise.
Thank you so much. Anytime, we have a wedding feature in the magazine, I always get 2 copies. So I have one and I give one to her, and she's just like pouring through. It's like, oh my God, look at this, look at that. So she's my biggest fan. And I keep saying it, but she's just, I think that when you're growing up, there's always going to be conflict, right? You're a teenager, you want to do what you want to do, and your mom's, putting down the hammer, like, yo, you can't do this, you can't do that, because, they love you and they want to make sure you're safe, that you're not going to make the mistakes that maybe they made, and you don't really realize that until you get older. So I can look back at those moments and see, I know that she had my best interest at heart. Always. I wish I had listened to her in many of those situations.
Ooh, we have this on record now. You're gonna play this for her?
Sure, absolutely. But you were right, Mom. You were absolutely right. I shouldn't have ran off and got a perm. I shouldn't have.
I'm sure she's forgiving you on that.
But it's like, wisdom, comes with experience, and she had that wisdom.
Thank you so much, Victoria. It was such a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you, Victoria. This is such an amazing podcast idea. And it was definitely an honor to be one of your guests and, to speak about my experience. And I hope that this gives anyone who's on the fence or who is a new mom, your kid is going to love you, and your kid is going to be like the most awesome person because they have a parent just like you.
Oh, thank you. I'm not going to cry. Don't make me cry in my podcast. Thank you, Victoria.
You're very welcome.
Thank you to Victoria Lartey-Williams for sharing of her beautiful experience growing up with an older mom. And she sounds fantastic, right? Look at the picture. Gorgeous. Thank you so much. I hope you had a wonderful Mother's Day. Tune in next week for a new episode. Leave a review while you're here and subscribe too. Take care of yourselves and each other. Bye for now.